All right. It's October 26, 9:53 p.m. And something unbelievable has happened today and unpredictable, but in a way it shows just how the Democrats have been lying through their teeth for months and how insane they are. I'm not going to talk about it myself. I'll turn it over to what I saw in Redacted and then over to a colonel in the Army.
In fact, I had to look at the calendar just to make sure that it wasn't April Fool's Day. But no, it's not. It's not April 1st. Yesterday, discussions about peace unfolded around Ukraine. This all started, it was coming out of Washington, D.C. So liberals, yesterday, 30 or so progressive Democrats, so-called progressive Democrats, led by Pramila Jayapal, who have up until this point openly funded the corrupt government of Ukraine, they wrote an open letter to President Biden calling for the White House to back off its war strategy in Ukraine and begin immediate ceasefire negotiations. Peace talks? Really? Really? I mean, nothing moves the needle like a strongly worded letter. They didn't make any television appearances, but they did write a letter, which is more than we can ask for, I guess.
Well, one of their main points is self-preservation, not just of their political career, but American borders. They said if this continues to ratchet up, we risk this war coming to our own shores so that, this will escalate into something we have to deal with. Right now, it's something we're choosing to. That's pretty logical. Those are things we've been saying.
Yes, exactly. We want to attack, the nuclear submarines attacking Los Angeles. Like, is that something you want? So stop it now. Peace talks now. Stop provoking the bear. And then almost immediately, at the same time that the White House, it was like almost amazing. I couldn't believe it. The White House then leapt into action. It was unbelievable. Pencil neck Ned Price, he's the spokesperson for the U.S. State Department. Yes, this is the same U.S. State Department that has openly funding drag shows in Ecuador with U.S. taxpayer dollars. Ned Price came out with a stunning statement about the very same corrupt Zelensky government in Ukraine. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what he was saying. The United States is rolling out massive sanctions, he said, against the corrupt government of Ukraine. Listen to all of the abuses that we've been covering on this show for months. Listen to Ned Price about Ukraine.
Into a single-party authoritarian state that silences dissent, imprisons political opponents, and shutters independent media and non-governmental organizations, attacks religious leaders, and uses proceeds from the production and sale of gold to enrich regime insiders and pay off those to keep them in power.
Wow.
Did you catch that? Doesn't that sound just like a country that you live in? Holy cow. Let me just play that back again. This is our spokesman for the Pentagon, and where all our money is going over to this billions and billions and billions of dollars and people dying and soldiers over there on the ground, and the 101st Airborne is now in the Ukraine to fight this battle, and all of a sudden they're proclaiming that the government of Ukraine are they're just like our government, a bunch of corrupt oligarchic crooks that are embezzling money, or they're just like BLM or Antifa, or this is really astounding. It couldn't be. This couldn't is truth is stranger than fiction could ever possibly be. Now here's Ned Price again, but note that I get so few viewers, but Redacted and I and any number of people have been covering all of this corruption in the Ukraine and the false narrative and the false reporting about the Ukraine war, which is still going on as of this morning. The same narrative is going on, but all of a sudden they've completely shifted the narrative to an about face, and now all of a sudden liberals want peace, and liberals that have voted in perfect lockstep for all of this money and for this war, and what is Tulsi Gabbard is calling these elitists in Washington who are warmongers, And they've also just invaded Haiti. That's not mentioned here either. It's like, if you want to know the most warmongering party, just simply put a check next to each war and who started it. And you'll see that, the tally is really weighted towards one party in particular. And right now is a case in point. And here is who is being supported. And the description used is completely familiar to me looking at the government in Washington.
Into a single party authoritarian state that silences dissent, imprisons political opponents, and shutters independent media and non-governmental organizations, attacks religious leaders, and uses proceeds from the production and sale of gold to enrich regime insiders and pay off those to keep them in power.
Wow, holy.
And not to put too fine a point on it, but who jumps to mind automatically is who was imprisoned by the Obama administration, Julian Assange. Political opponents are people who purport the truth. And Obama put more whistleblowers into prison than all the presidents before him combined. So why we see the Democrat, or I don't see them that way, but why we see the Democrats as the peace party is beyond me. And it's also people like Roger Waters of Pink Floyd who were saying that Julian, the far left, the part of the far left that I was a part of anyway, the anti-war far left and Green Party that I was a part of, always were against Obama and were against Hillary Clinton and were against all these wars. That'll come up in just a minute. I'm trying to punctuate how bizarre this is, that, in the course of one day, the Democrats have made it a complete about-face. And again, I'll just emphasize this over and over and over. I'm not political. I'm not politically biased or motivated for one party or another, not being a voter myself, having left the political system quite a while ago. I'm going to go to Colonel Black now. All right. So this is U.S. Colonel Richard Black. The quote is, "It's not Russia that is planning an October surprise with a dirty bomb," right? Meaning that it's the U.S. and the Ukraine that are planning it. Now, I'm not going to say this because I don't know, how much heat is going to come on me from the Truth Ministry, but this is the truth. And this is so fascinating to me that all of this is coming out in one day when the narrative has been the exact opposite. The entirety, as I was pointing out to a friend of mine the other day, the entirety of the Western media is running one narrative. And by Western media, I mean Western Europe and America.
I'm happy to be here with you this morning. Let me get right into this. Here's where we are now. There are influential Republicans who have begun calling for reductions in aid to Ukraine and also for immediate peace talks to end the war. President Trump has called for talks, and he says we have to avoid being dragged into World War III. He said the war never would have happened under his watch, but in any event, he wants to end it now. The Pope has called for negotiated, peaceful solutions to the war, and we had a fairly dramatic announcement. Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who very, very prominent in the Democrat Party and a presidential candidate, resigned from the Democrats, and she now denounced them as an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driving us into World War III. Republican Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has announced that if Republicans win the House, that there would no longer be a blank check for money flowing over to Ukraine. He wasn't saying they were going to cut it off. He just said that it was going to become much more closely scrutinized. Elon Musk sometimes the wealthiest man on earth, has tweeted a very excellent proposal for peace talks. I won't go into all of it, but it did include the United Nations moving into the contested areas and conducting binding referenda to let the Ukrainians on the border vote and decide, do they want to remain in Ukraine or do they want to join Russia? And when he made this proposal, the Russians very quickly said that they would agree that if the United Nations conducted a plebiscite, a binding referendum, that they would abide by the outcome, by the vote of the people, and that they would withdraw if that was the decision that the people made. On the other hand, though, the Ukraine angrily denounced any notion of self-determination for the people on the border. They know that these are Russian-speaking people, they're ethnic Russians, and they do not want to give them a choice of whether they want to return to Russia or remain with the Ukraine. Now, while this is going on the other side of the aisle, we have Democrat Senator Chris Murphy, and he said that he believes that if Republicans win either the House or the Senate, that they will cut off all aid to Ukraine. I don't agree with him. I don't think that's likely to happen, but he's trying to obviously whip up some interest from among the globalists who have a tremendous amount of wealth and power at stake in this war. Now, here's the thing. Strangely, when Joe Biden pushed through an aid package for Ukraine, just a massive spending bill that has $40 billion, half of it for actual weapons, not a single Democrat voted against this bill. Media Benjamin, the co-founder of Code Pink, a radical Democrat anti-war group, said this, quote, "We were flabbergasted that not one Democrat voted against the $40 billion bill for Ukraine, not even the Squad or the Progressive Caucus. At the same time, 57 Republican conservatives did vote against this massive bill of arms for Ukraine." So you can see which direction it is. The Democrats are all in for war. The Republicans are having second thoughts. They say it's time for caution. We can't afford to be spending all this money there. Well, looking at this stark distinction in the two parties, it smells to me like a political trap, and it really worries me a great deal. Now, it's just 2 weeks before Election Day, and Republicans at this moment have tremendous momentum to retake both the House and the Senate. This is going to happen unless the Biden administration can pull off a very nasty October surprise to tip the elections. Now, the background of this is we've got Britain's Defense Secretary Ben Wallace just making a highly secretive, very extraordinary visit to Washington to talk with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and White House officials about shared security concerns. So secret that they couldn't be talked about on the most secure scrambled telephone lines. There's a second defense minister, James Heppey, who said that the conversations with Wallace would be beyond belief. It's a strange way to put it, beyond belief, suggesting that something both militarily and politically explosive was being planned. The Russians just released intelligence indicating that they believe that Ukraine is about to to detonate a nuclear dirty bomb. And I fear that what they're saying is correct. It would tie directly in to the elections taking place. And I think their plan is to execute a dirty bomb detonation that will throw radioactive nuclear material over a radius of several miles. I believe that the plan is a false flag intended to be blamed on Russia in order to inflame public opinion against Russia, just as the elections are about to be held, putting the Republicans on the defensive because they have been calling for peace.
Okay, I just want to interject for a second just to put a punctuation exclamation mark on that. This shows who the Democrat Party is. It shows what warmongers they are. They're prepared to explode a nuclear device as a false flag event. This is a Colonel Richard Black. You know, he's a military analyst. I've listened to dozens of them. People who don't have investments, you know, in the war machine, and that includes the globalists, not just the Americans. These wars are all about profit, and they don't care how many people they kill or how many nuclear bombs they set off, just to have a false flag event that they can blame on the Russians. Now I'll say beyond that I think that they're going to have a false flag event after the election. I don't know that I can predict anything. I've never claimed being a prophet, but my instinct is to think that there's going to be some kind of event where there's a banking crisis, there's a grid crisis, there's the electronic attack like we had on the oil pipeline a couple months ago, or a year or so ago, over a year ago. I think it was called Colonial Pipeline, but it ran down through the Virginias, and that was blamed on the Russians. That's like a dry run. Everything's blamed on the Russians. Like the Russians stole the election, the Russians did this, the Russians, oh, we have inflation, it's the Russians. We have the gas prices are going up, oh, it's the Russians. Everything, even though we're the ones blowing the gas pipeline, we're the ones trying to blow up a nuclear reactor in Crimea with what was just called by Ned Price, the Pentagon spokesman, this corrupt oligarchic dictatorship that is imprisoning people, which they are doing, and they have a Nazi battalion. That means Hitler is a Nazi. These are genuine Nazis that, bizarrely enough, are under the command of a Jewish comedian, actor, who decides to go into politics. If this isn't acting, I don't know. You know, I thought Ronald Reagan was a great actor, but he didn't have the entirety of the media on his side. You know, the left media was continually attacking Reagan until he became popular, and then all of a sudden they're all for Reagan. I mean, this is a quisling press. It's a trick. The press is on the side of, guess who? The oligarchs. The press has always been on the side of the oligarchic class. Why Americans somehow think that they're for the people, you know, and that they're going to tell the truth, and you can always get the truth from the State Department, and the CIA, and the FBI, and Hillary Clinton, and Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, and Oak Sulzberger family, who owned the New York Times. It's political propaganda. It's art propaganda. It's cultural propaganda. It's a warmongering. Where does their profit come from? Well, look at where our profit comes from. Porno, Hollywood, pop culture, porno, pharmaceuticals, selling insurance, selling real estate, selling coffee and hamburgers and fast food joints, and selling a bunch of junk, you know, at the dollar store that people are eating cricket food now What's gonna come after this is water crises, fight over. I was out west, man, that drought is really meaningful in terms of fighting. All those states fight over water, and they've drained this Rio Grande dry, and the Colorado River is dry, and Lake Mead, which waters, and the wealthy just they'll water their horse farms with Kentucky bluegrass until it's up to their knees in afternoon, so all their horses can graze. It's the and they're the people that are fighting so hard for global warming, that's going to kill us all. Who are the ones who are flying around in the Learjets and the helicopters and the out to Epstein Island and back and forth? Oh, they're fighting against global warming. The hypocrisy is like it's from, gone beyond Mars. And that's another con game. We're going to have a space program where people are going to fly to Mars? On what date is that set for? Who's going on it exactly? Oh, it'll be in the Matt Damon, and they'll, he'll grow a biodome, and they'll all be watching. Oh, they'll be watching movies with Matt Damon growing the biodome, or 2001, or Total Recall, or Total Lack of Recall. Anyway, on with the show. Let me see. I want to go back to this, because this is what we're doing is moving nuclear submarines. We're preparing for, we're trying to intimidate Russia with our nuclear submarines. And it's just like Morris said, they've got nuclear submarines off the coast, or off Alaska. They've got nukes in Nicaragua. People aren't reading the news. I mean, people just simply, all they read is this bullshit from the media feed, and they believe whatever they hear on TV. Now they're going to believe the opposite narrative and forget. There'll be amnesia. I don't know. Did we go to? Did we ever attack? Were we supporting this fascist government in the Ukraine? Not us.
Now, it's important for everybody to just lean back and think of the logic of this. There's no circumstance under which Russia would do anything dramatic like this just days before the election. Right now, the party that is more reasonable towards them, in their view, is winning the election. It's got tremendous momentum. And anything that they would do would break that momentum and play into the hands of the Democratic Party, which is 100% opposed to Russia and probably opposed to its continued existence as a nation. So I think we face very, very perilous times. The Eurasian Times just published something. It didn't hit the Western media, but there was a very extraordinary event that occurred when a U.S. Ohio-class submarine surfaced in the Arabian Sea. This is a secretive submarine that's armed with 20 ICBM nuclear-tipped missiles. It was deliberately surfaced in a very public way, disclosing its exact location and sending a clear signal that the U.S. is now fully prepared for nuclear war. This is nuclear saber rattling at its highest level, and I believe it was done to inhibit Russia from responding to a possible dirty bomb attack with some kind of a major response to target Kiev itself. America has never been at greater nuclear peril than it is today. We certainly have madmen in charge both in the US and in the UK. We have very strange things happening in Britain, where the prime minister was sacked just days after taking office. The English pound was plummeting. Suddenly, as soon as she left office, the English pound was up at a much higher level. And ironically, the individual who was fired for Lisa Trusk's very, what they said, disastrous financial policies, is now the lead contender to become the Prime Minister of Britain. Very strange. We know that King Charles, one of the ultimate globalists, wanted Trusk gone, and apparently he's got his man in. So,
Yeah, they'll punctuate that as well. It's Anglo-American. It's Britain. Who's driving this is Britain and the U.S. And the NATO allies are falling apart. They don't want anything to do with this. France is against us. Germany is against us. The rest of the countries are, Italy is now fascist. I mean, they're that far. They don't even want to have anything to do with progressive or liberalism now. This has become a global disaster that all that it's driving towards is bankrupting everybody, is destroying the economies. America is trying to push for Russian aluminum to be banned, and the European Union is screaming bloody murder about it because that's their manufacturing base. We're in a trade war, using Europe as the sacrificial victim, like by getting rid of their natural gas supply so we can sell them liquid natural gas. That's what Kissinger said, it's being friends with America is fatal. Being your enemy is dangerous, but being our friend is fatal. And that's where treason comes in, the treachery. And I'll move to Timothy. These perilous times we live in, as Colonel Black is saying, is prophesied by Paul in his last letter to Timothy about what the end times will resemble. And it's a perfect description of where we are right now.